You are listening to the Savage FINcast, Episode 7, Genocide, Deicide, and Daxicide.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast, back again for another episode, Episode 7. I'm Jim Purcell.
And I'm Craig.
And it's just us two this month.
I know I say this probably every episode, but I'm pretty excited about this episode, especially as we have Cory Hamscher. He's going to be talking to us a little later on. You guys know him as the artist of Supreme, so we've got that going on, and we've just got two Savage Dragon related, Erik Larsen related comics with Supreme 65 and Savage Dragon 180, both out recently, and
same week. They both came out this week.
Yeah.
Last week.
Yeah. So, I mean, Supreme is, Erik he's finished off the Moore story and closed that up, and it's kind of a new beginning with, now Erik's kind of full steam ahead with his stories, and the Savage Dragon issue is kind of wrapping up that major alien invasion story arc. So, there's a lot to talk about today.
Yep. But before we get to that, Craig, you ready? Have you read anything interesting recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff out, but a couple of things I'd like to talk about. What I'm reading between issues of Savage Dragon is American Barbarian came out probably about a month ago now, maybe a little bit more. American Barbarian is Tom Scioli's brainchild to create our own project that came out through Ad House Book. Tom
Scioli, he's the guy who did not Jersey Gods.
He does Godland.
Godland.
Yeah, he's done The Myth of Eight Opus. He's done Freedom Force. He's got that real Jack Kirby style going on. But it's a good read. American Barbarian kind of started off as a webcomic.
Yeah, I read it as a webcomic. It updated sporadically. I don't know if it ever kept to a schedule, but you got a new panel or a new page about a couple times a week.
Yeah, and it's a comic. I mean, it's perfect medium, perfect story for the medium. It's anything goes, anything can happen. It's a mix of like Thundar the Barbarian with, I don't know, like sci-fi and Mad Max, and
I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, I liked the art, but I honestly thought, I don't know, it didn't really resonate with me like I hoped it would. I mean, it had like great imagery, but I'll be honest, I didn't really care about the villain, and I thought some of the characters were a bit stereotypical, but it was definitely going for that Kamani vibe, I guess, and that similar type thing, and I guess that's what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
So I can dig it.
Yeah, I think what he was going for is he just wanted to have a comic where he kind of could just do everything and anything. If you wanted robotic dinosaurs or, I don't know, psychedelic kind of trippy things and, villains with tanks for feet or whatever he wanted to throw in, he could throw in, and you wouldn't really question it because it's just a fun comic. It's just, you just want to see some adventure and just some crazy wild things happen. And that's what you got. I mean, you have to be pretty open-minded. You have to, be that kind of person that enjoys, like, some kind of wild ride with just things that are just so fantastic that just possibly couldn't happen in real life. But
And ever since American Barbarian ended, he's been running this new comic called Final Frontier.
Yeah.
Which is definitely his take on the Fantastic Four and the coming of Galactus and all that good stuff. Again, I'm not too totally into it, but I definitely keep up on it.
Right. I actually have been liking that better than American Barbarian, and I like American Barbarian, so I'll be interested in keeping up with it, and hopefully that he puts that into like a hardcover collection like American Barbarian. So.
Oh, I'm sure you'll see that eventually once it reaches its conclusion.
Yeah. So,
I'm not sure how long it's supposed to run.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think he just kind of, I don't know if he even has that planned out or he just keeps going until he kind of figures out, how he wants to run with it. But anyway, I recommend it. I know the Gutter Trash podcast, which is in our network of podcasts, they actually host our podcast.
Yeah, they're our host. They've taken good care of us. I got to give a shout out to my friend Erik. I'm gonna butcher this. Schonburn, which sucks because I've been internet friends with him for years now, and I was really impressed with him. I met him back when Newsarama used to have a forum. We used to be part of a monthly art thread where we would get a topic and then we would draw it, and that's where I kind of got into his art. And then eventually Newsarama died and he moved to his own blog, and for the last year, since not since February, but for a whole year, he updated one piece of art per day for 372 days. And it was awesome just to watch him work. And I'm just so thankful that when we decided to do this podcast, that he really came up to bat to give us web hosting and pointers. And really, without him, we probably wouldn't be here.
Cool. Yeah.
So I got to thank him.
Definitely. And check out their podcast. I was about to say that they reviewed American Barbarian, and they enjoyed it for the most part. They had some issues with some things, but it's a good listen. And if you decide you think you might be interested, you might want to give their podcast a listen to and see what they had to say.
I might do that myself, actually.
So anyway, that's kind of like what I've been reading. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff, but we'll just go with that for this episode. What have you been into?
Well, nothing. I just for regular comics that come out every month, I'm reading Saga and Manhattan Projects, which are two of my favorite new Image titles that came of this year.
Yeah, they've been a hit.
Oh yeah, they've been burning up the sales charts, as I understand it. But Saga's interesting. This latest issue of Saga was really, really good. Like, win all the Eisner Awards good.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion. It's just, I don't know if you read it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it because it's one of those moments in comics that you got to experience it when it happens.
Right.
And it's just so good. Manhattan Projects, Jonathan Hickman. Again, there's another issue where there's a big reveal in it that I really don't want to spoil. That when it happens, you go, huh? And then it all makes sense.
Yeah, and Manhattan Projects is cool because it's all kind of based on reality, but it's really twisted.
Right.
It's a fun read. I've really enjoyed where it's going. And the best part about these comics is that they've all been coming out really on time and really kept the momentum going. I've really enjoyed that. That's sometimes a downfall of creator-owned comics is you might get one or two issues out and then there's a lag. But these guys have really been pumping them out and keeping us interested. And
got to keep that train rolling, or you lose all of your passengers, and that's the death of most independent comics.
Right, and the writing and art has been superb on both of them. It's great. I'm really enjoying those as well. Yeah,
Fiona Staples. I mean, her backgrounds aren't great, but everything else is fantastic.
Yeah, and just the types of characters she's drawing. I mean, it's all based on alien worlds and stuff, so it's like there's no real human looking characters. There's a few, but for the majority she's just constantly drawing different kinds of weird aliens, and it's pretty cool.
It is. Well, we should probably move on to some news. Actually, first up we should talk about FINcast news, which we don't have nearly enough of, I guess. We've been picked up by Image Addiction, which is an Image Comics news blog.
Yeah, it's imageaddiction.net.
we've joined their podcast network, so we'll be rubbing shoulders with some other podcasts that have similar subject matter to Image Comics.
Yeah, they have some real good podcasts that I've been listening to for a while. The General Image Addiction podcast is kind of like just their podcast about what's going on at Image. I think they do press releases on it, but my favorite part of it is their reviews of comics. So they'll review all the different Image comics, and if you're like me, Image is putting out so many new good comics that you don't have enough money to buy them all. So it's good to kind of get someone's kind of opinion on it, and then go from there and be able to pick and choose, based on some reviews, what you want to try to pick up.
Are they pretty comprehensive? Talk about pretty much everything Image puts out?
Yeah, they do a good job. I enjoy it. They do Top Cow, they do Spawn, they do the main Image.
That's cool. I haven't had time to check them out, but it's definitely on my list.
Yeah, and they also do a lot of interviews with creators and stuff like that. Additionally, you have the Process podcast, which is a good podcast for people who want to learn a little more about the creative end of Image Comics and writing comics and stuff like that. They do a lot of interviews, and they also have the Evangeline podcast, which is set up by the creators of the guys that are writing and drawing Evangeline, which is a Rob Liefeld comic. And I think that's kind of morphing into also like a kind of like a Youngblood podcast, because they had John Mallon on, I think that's how you say his last name, on the last episode, and they spent the whole episode talking about Youngblood, and I think they were saying that they might try doing that monthly.
So it's the actual creators of the comic. So it's
Correct.
like commentary on the comic
Yeah,
itself.
it's kind of like a director's commentary, which is kind of cool. I always like that,
Yeah, that does sound interesting.
Yeah. So those are the Image Addiction podcasts out there, and it's cool that the FINcast is joining them, and I think we'll add a good bit from the Erik Larsen side of the Image universe. So I think
it definitely feels like a good fit.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna
I'm excited.
gonna work out.
And they're a good bunch of guys over there, and like I said, and we fit in perfectly over there, so it was a no-brainer.
Well, we've also got some Erik Larsen news. Just a few things. We got new covers for Savage Dragon 185 and Supreme 68.
Mm-hmm.
The Savage Dragon cover is Dragon in a courtroom, and the drawing style is done like a courtroom sketch, like you see on the TV when they're talking about major court cases. So it's pretty clear that the trial of Savage Dragon is going to be a major arc component to this next arc.
Right. One thing I did notice, Erik posted up the image, I believe, on Twitter. It's on dragonfan.net, so if you want to check it out, go there, and I'm sure we'll have a link to it on our podcast website. But I don't know if it's just kind of him using an old cover mock-up, but the price on the cover says $350. If you remember, we discussed, I think it was 184 solicitation showed the price at $399. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm thinking it's probably,
I'm sure it's a mistake. We couldn't be that lucky.
Yeah, he already said at $399, unless the other one was a mistake, but he never really piped
Yeah, we
in.
talked to him when that happened, though. Right? He was on. We interviewed him that week.
Yeah, I don't know if he
Or didn't we? No, wait.
I don't think he ever addressed that, so it could go either way. We'll have to just stay tuned and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Supreme 68 cover is also out. Erik posted that on his Twitter as well, and it's also on dragonfan.net. And Erik described it as the cover to Supreme 68 featuring the Son of Chrome out for revenge. And I looked up this Chrome character on, I think, the Comic Vine website database, and he was featured way back in Supreme number 3 through 6. He's kind of got this weird pointy mask with sharp teeth. From what I've gathered and read, he's kind of like an alien warlord type guy, and I think I had like up to Supreme #5 back in the early '90s. I just don't remember.
Yeah, I've got no idea who this guy is.
Yeah.
I did not read any of that.
Right. So
I'm curious about how Erik will introduce him to us new audience members.
yeah, I think he's gonna give him a brand new introduction. Like he said it's Son of Chrome. So I doubt there's many people out there that remember back to 1992 or '93 for 3 issues of Supreme.
Well, I can't wait to find out.
Right.
Because the latest Supreme I'm definitely digging this book right now.
Cool.
Bit of a oddball bit of news. Apparently, the Freak Show Skateboard Company is putting out a deck with part of their long box series that features Savage Dragon, which, when I found out about it, was like the weirdest bit of news I'd heard in a long time. It just feels like the sort of thing you would have seen back in the early 90s when Savage Dragon was like super hot.
Yeah.
And now here is 2012 and Savage Dragon on a skateboard.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird. If anyone's interested in checking it out, I think their website is freakshowskateboards.com. But I don't know who else is involved in this long box series. I'm assuming it's other comic book artists, and maybe they just wanted to grab a premier comic book artist to kick it off. And Erik was just like, sure. It's not a new image on that box. It's from the first issue from the Back in Blue arc. What's that issue number? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it's an image of Dragon busting some Vicious Circle goons' heads in the bar in the Freak Outpost. So it's an existing image. It's not like you're gonna get a new image or anything like that, or an exclusive drawing from Erik. I know it did say that the skate decks are available signed by Larsen, though. So even if you don't skate, it might look good hanging up on your wall or something like that. But yeah, like you said, it was a little bit of a weird news item.
This episode, we are extremely excited to be here with professional comic book artist Cory Hamscher. Cory's professional portfolio encompasses over a decade of work illustrating comic books for Marvel, Image, Devil's Due, and Avatar Press. Cory's career highlights include inking G.I. Joe, including the G.I. Joe vs. Transformers miniseries, illustrating comics from the Marvel Adventures line, and inking Marvel titles such as Incredible Hulks, X-Men Forever, and Scar, Son of Hulk. Savage Dragon fans will remember him from his Thor backup in Savage Dragon 150. Cory's current work includes inking Marvel's Avengers Academy title, as well as penciling and inking the relaunch of Extreme Studios' Supreme from Image Comics. Thank you for joining us, Cory.
How's it going, Jim?
Oh, it's going pretty well. I actually have the current issue of Supreme in my hand, so it's actually going super well.
How'd you get that?
Proprietary secret.
You know somebody, right?
I do.
You have somebody.
Erik let us have advanced copies so that we could do this.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. I was thinking about since it comes out tomorrow, I was going to be able to talk about it or not.
Oh yeah, we all got a chance to read it in anticipation for this interview, so
Sweet.
We are good to talk about it because that's what we really want to talk about is the latest issue, as well as
Awesome.
various other things.
Sounds good to me.
Let's start off with talking about briefly how you actually got into comics, maybe even as like a kid. Did it start as a kid, or was it something later in life?
Oh, yeah. It started definitely as a kid. I got 4 comics, a 4-pack of Marvel comics on my first birthday from my parents. So, and I didn't get any other comics until I was like 4 or 5 years old, but I had those 4 comics from like the age 1 for years. So before I could even draw or anything, my mind was always wrapped around these comics. So once I started to draw and pick up crayons and shit, I was always drawing Spider-Man and Hulk, Fantastic Four, and then just kept with it my whole life. That's all I wanted to do.
Is that something?
They set me on the path early.
Were your folks, or was there someone in your family that were artists that kind of passed, this?
No, not really. My grandpa drew, but he just did it kind of like in journals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just something that I got into young, and I just, visually it was just so exciting that it's all I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
I never had any other delusions about being a fireman or anything like that as a kid.
It was always
drawing comics.
That's awesome. And how did you actually start to break into the field?
I started going to conventions when I was in high school, like around 93 or 94, showing my stuff off, and I got a job doing some illustrations for a magazine, like in 96 after I graduated. And then just every couple of years, I'd go to more conventions. I eventually got in with Avatar. A couple of years later, I did something for Chaos, and then I got something with Devil's Due. I just kind of, kept building up and showing my work around, and then...
You worked for Chaos? Was that towards the end before it
Yeah, it was real close towards the end. It was I worked for them the fall of 2001, and then I think by the spring of 2002 they were already folded up. I'm not taking any credit for that.
So you said you graduated in 1996, so you were probably around 12 or 13 when the Image boom really started, when everyone left Marvel, I would assume, which is kind of close to my age. I remember just being enthralled with all these creators.
Yeah, I was in like 8th grade or 7th grade, and they were all blowing up at Marvel.
Yeah.
Jim Lee was already on. I didn't know for years that he did anything with Alpha Flight. I got into his work on Punisher War Journal.
Right.
And I remember kids bringing the Wolverine issue, like issue 5 or issue 6 or something, to school. And then Rob was just getting going on the Mutants. McFarlane had already been doing Amazing Spider-Man for a while.
Right.
I think Erik was doing Marvel Comics Presents. I remember him doing a few different series.
Yep. He was.
So I got into all these guys, right when they were starting to get big at the Image or the Marvel level. I mean.
Right.
So I still, a lot of people think of them as the Image guys, and they are because they created Image. But I still think of them as before that. So that's when I came into their work.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a wild time in Marvel. I mean, I remember like books like series like The Extinction Agenda, and you had all these heavy hitters drawing.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. And then you go from McFarlane drawing Spider-Man, then right over to Erik Larsen, and it was just like, it was incredible. It was a good time to get into comics, and I could see how a lot of kids then were just became influenced to start drawing comics and get into comics just by that wave of illustrators at that time.
Right. It really did feel like a movement almost. I remember on New Comic Day after school going to the local comic shop, and everybody would be going for these same 5 or 6 books, and it was all the same guys. It was Silvestri on Uncanny X-Men, and then later Wolverine, and everyone was just crowding all to these same books. So you kind of felt that it was something special was going on, because it never felt like that before.
Right.
It still doesn't feel like that. Now it's all about what the biggest event is, but back then it was all about the people working on the books.
Yeah, exactly. So you saying you started early in Chaos and Avatar and Devil's Due, and then you got some work with Marvel. How did that come about?
Oh, I got in contact with Marvel through the mail.
Mm-hmm.
I was sending them samples, and Mark Panacea, I think that's how you pronounce his name. They call him Panic over at Marvel. He's still a big editor over there.
Uh-huh.
He was my contact. He just had gotten hired back in at Marvel, and he was handling things like submissions. This is probably going back to 2005, maybe.
Right.
And anyways, he liked my stuff enough that he actually sent me out photocopies of other artists' work, like Joe Madureira and Mark Bagley, a bunch of guys. He wanted to ink these for like samples. So they had like the current Marvel artist samples from me. And it took about a year, and then he called me up and let me know that they had a spot for an inker on Marvel Adventure Spider-Man. And then I inked an issue, but the penciler dropped out. I guess he couldn't handle the deadlines. And Mark knew that I had also done penciling work, so he actually let me finish up the 4-issue arc doing pencils and inks. So then I did like two or 3 years bouncing around with the Marvel Adventures titles doing pencils and inks before I started doing full-time inks for Marvel, which was like 3 years ago.
Right. That's awesome. And how?
So you're primarily an inker right now?
Well, for the last couple of years, yes, with Marvel. But I mean, I do whatever. Up until a couple of years ago, every job I got because I could do both jobs, and then it kind of turned into one of the other jobs. But I mean, my time's pretty evenly split between Supreme and Avengers Academy. So I mean, it's like 2 weeks of the month I'm inking, 2 weeks of the month I'm penciling and inking stuff on Supreme. So I wouldn't say I'm mostly an inker, but I guess I just think of it as an artist. I don't know.
Right. So how did you
It's hard for me to separate the two.
Yeah,
Everyone thinks of like inking as like a separate thing, and for me, inking is just finishing the drawing in ink. I'm still drawing, so I never thought about it as like two separate jobs like that.
Right. Is there a definite like a big pay difference between your penciling work though and just inking? I would assume.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. The rates are a lot different.
Right.
I like my paychecks a lot better when I was penciling ink in Marvel Adventures titles than I do just inking titles. But I can ink pretty fast. So before Supreme, I was always inking. For the last couple of years, I was inking between 16 and 18 books a year.
Wow.
So the pay's not as good, but I can double up on the amount of work I can take on.
Right.
So it kind of evens itself out.
Exactly. So how did you were you a longtime reader of Savage Dragon? I know you said you were into like the Image books and stuff early on. I'm just wondering where the connection was and how Erik got, I think for readers or listeners that don't know, you did a short backup story in Savage Dragon 150, and that's where I first discovered your work. But how did you get to that point where, you talked to Erik or met Erik and got involved in that?
Well, I was always a fan of Erik back when he was doing Marvel stuff, and then of course with Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon was like the only book that throughout the years I kept buying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bought them for the guys that were working on the book.
Right.
So when everyone else did their own something else, I'd stay on for a couple of issues and I eventually got the book. But Savage Dragon was the one book, and continues to be the one book that I still always pick up. So I've always been a fan, not just of him as an artist, but just his whole career, just doing what he wants to do, telling his stories, having fun. It doesn't matter, really what the money is for him. He just does it because he wants to do it.
Right.
That's the bottom line, which I think is pretty badass.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like 2010, I think, or 2009. He was at Wizard World Chicago, and I was walking around and saw him sitting at a table. And my buddy said, just go talk to him, because he knew that he was one of my idols. I just never talked to him before. So I approached him and asked about doing a backup story, because I know that he has a lot of artists do that. And he told me, there's no pay in it, but if I wanted to do it, then to send him some samples, and if he liked them, then we'd do something. And 2 days later, I sent him some samples, and then that story was a go. He said, we'll do something for Savage Dragon 150, but this was like a year before it came out.
Right.
So it took a few months before I actually did it, but I got in contact with him pretty early, and I just kept touching base with him like once a month just so he remembered who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, the following spring, when he was like putting the backup stories together, I happened to email him right at the time that he was, thinking about something, and so he mailed me over a couple paragraphs describing like a 6-issue or a 6-page story, and then I asked off of half of an issue of a book I was inking for Marvel at the time, so I could take like a week and do that Thor story.
Yeah.
And then from that Thor story, eventually came the Supreme thing too. So it's all kind of connected.
Yeah. In somewhere in between there, I know that we had talked or we had interviewed you for the Dragon Fan website, and we had also talked to Erik, and there was some kind of Hercules quasi project or something.
After the Thor story, I told him that, if he ever wanted to do another backup, I'm definitely down to doing it. And he suggested doing a real book, that way I could get paid. So I was like, sounds good to me.
Yeah, right.
And then, a couple months later, that turned into Hercules, or Heracles. And then after I did like the first 10 pages, he scripted like the first 10 pages.
Uh-huh.
And then it took me like 2 months to pencil them, because I was still inking other stuff for Marvel.
Right.
And then that was right around the time that Image United and a bunch of other things were coming out.
Yeah.
So I think everyone just got kind of too busy with their own things, and then when we came back to it a couple months later, no one was really hot on it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then 6 months later, I emailed him asking, do you still want to do something with this, or do you want to do something at all? And that's when he had the idea about Supreme.
Wow, it's pretty awesome.
This is like Thanksgiving-ish 2010 is when I first heard about Supreme.
Yeah. I know on your Facebook page, I think you actually posted some of the pencil pages of the Heracles comic, right? They looked pretty neat from what I saw. It's kind of a cool, what if kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, hopefully we'll get around to eventually using them for something. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to do them and put them in the back of a Savage Dragon issue. I mean, that's good enough for me.
Right.
And we want to read it.
Yeah. I want to read it too. I don't remember what it was, the story. I just know the pictures.
Right. But it's kind of
how Supreme works. I don't know what anyone's going to be saying until
yeah, that's right. Erik does his scripting after the art's done. Was that the case when you guys did Thor as well?
I think so, but it was so new to me that I don't really remember how he worked. But for Supreme, that's exactly how it is. I'm going by his layouts. I don't have a script. I don't have anything to read.
That's amazing.
So I'm making out the story. It's pretty cool. It's awesome now. At first it was weird because I got caught in situations where I was drawing the wrong characters in spots because I just couldn't tell the difference.
Right.
And I didn't know I didn't know what the exact story was. I mean, I can tell what's going on, but I don't know, some of the little intricacies.
Well, how do you
without there being a script?
How do you know how to make like a facial expression if someone's like, yelling or happy?
Well, sometimes he'll scribble in a facial expression, so those are usually pretty easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
Other times on certain pages, he'll actually scribble in the dialogue for a couple panels.
We should back up a little bit for listeners that might not understand, but I mean, the dynamic here is Erik is kind of got these real rough layouts, right? Can you kind of explain what you're receiving from Erik for Supreme for those who might not know? Because I think there's a lot of confusion of people who don't really know who's actually they think it might be Erik that's actually penciling when it's really his rough layouts and you're doing the penciling and inking.
Yeah, I think what Erik sends me, he inks that for Savage Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, you can call these pages his pencils because that's all he pencils for himself if he was inking himself.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, I think sometimes they're really loose. But I've seen stuff online that he posts like his pencils and then his inks, and his pencils are just scribbles.
Right.
So I mean, he does a lot of the work, in his inks. So these can kind of be called pencils, but what I'm actually doing is, the first issue was really scribbly. It was, and there were hardly any faces in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I just lightboxed, basically just like placement for the figures.
Right.
I got it so all the panels are the right size that he wanted, and then I just kind of lightboxed loosely figure placement, and if there's like a facial expression or something, and then after that, then I put his layout to the side, and then I just draw my own style on top of that, and then I ink it.
I know on your Facebook you've also shown Erik's real rough layouts versus your Titan pencils and inks. It might be nice if possible to get a few of those samples to post up on the podcast page so some of the listeners can actually see what we're talking about. But it is amazing to see.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I have scans of for the first issue 63. Well, we might as well do the new issue, right? 65. He's one of those pages.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm talking, like the first page of all the Supremes on there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that one's already online, I think, actually.
Oh, yeah.
But, I'll send you some stuff. How long does it take you to put up a podcast?
In this particular case, we're probably not going to put it up until next week because we got to record another section, but we got some time.
Okay, so you have time for me to get you something and post it up, and I'll give you some notes to go with it too.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the listeners to kind of see what we're talking about if they haven't seen it already. I don't think everyone's connected to your Facebook page, and you probably don't want everyone on your Facebook page, but
yeah, I keep it kind of mostly for business and stuff anyway, so
yeah,
that's okay.
So sorry not to break that up, but
yes, I mean, there's definitely when you see his layouts, I can show you my layouts, pencils, and the inks. But there's definitely spots where I hook right in with what he's doing because I have a lot of him in my style to begin with, just because I've been a fan of his work for so long. But, it's kind of easier for me to just draw on my own Larsen influence rather than trying to mimic the lines he's putting down, because there's nothing that he can put down that I can tackle the way he would that would look better than what he's doing in Savage Dragon. So for me, it made sense to kind of, put my style on top of everything. That way it's a pure, experience rather than me not living up to previous, Larsen art.
Right. So,
and then you'll see that there's some spots where like I kind of go in a different direction, but I never change his storytelling. And I sometimes I'll tweak like a face. Well, I do a lot of stuff with the faces and stuff, but every once in a while, like I'll change the way someone's like positioned, but it's very rare. I try to stick with all his positions, his storytelling, and then just put my stuff on top of it.
Right. So how long does it take you to complete an issue once you get his layouts?
Completing an issue kind of takes long because I'm doing other work.
Yeah.
But hours on a page, it only takes like maybe 2 or 3 hours of pencils and then maybe like 4 hours of inks per page. And he's probably putting in, I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing, like 20 or 30 minutes a page in his layouts, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
so I think from start to finish, each page is like around 8 hours.
Wow. Yeah. So it's about a day a page, which makes for a tight schedule if you're going monthly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not too bad. I'm used to working, 2 inking gigs.
Right.
So I'm used to doing a lot of all-nighters and stuff. So,
wow.
Yeah, and it kind of takes me longer to ink than it does to pencil anyways.
Right.
So
65 comes out tomorrow. At this point, how many issues do you have? Are you ahead of the game, or are you?
I'm working on 67 right now.
Cool.
So we're a little ahead. We're not, as far as we'd like to be.
Right.
Or I'd like to be, but I think that's in part because we're both working on multiple books.
Right.
I mean, if we were treating this like a full book, we'd probably be 4 or 5 issues up right now.
Mm-hmm.
But 67 isn't bad. I think 66 already is colored and lettered already.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time that comes out, I'll probably be halfway through 68. I'm hoping. I don't have any Avengers Academy issues to do in July, so I'm hoping to double up that month on Supreme.
Yeah, get him out the door. How involved is Rob Liefeld in the process? I mean, I know with the other books he doesn't seem to be very involved and doesn't seem very on this one. Or
I got hired in for this, through Erik. Erik brought me on, so I don't have any. I talk to Rob every once in a while, in an email or something.
Yeah.
But I don't really have any
direct contact.
Contact with them, as far as Supreme.
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably, proofreads everything or oversees everything at the last second. Not last second, but, before it goes to press.
Right.
Just to see it, or if he has any problems with it. But, maybe he's more involved with Erik. I don't know.
Right.
Are you reading any of the other Extreme relaunch titles yourself?
Yeah, I started. I have a load of comics at the comic shop, but I have the First Prophet,
mm-hmm.
and I just picked up the Youngblood. I think that was last month.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple others. What else? Bloodstrike.
Have you?
I'm like 3 or 4 issues back on all that stuff.
Right.
But it definitely looks interesting. I can't wait to get the rest of my Prophets.
Yeah, Prophet's amazing. They're all the new books, honestly, from Extreme have been amazing. My favorites, besides Supreme's Prophet and Glory, and actually Bloodstrike's been pretty cool too. Real fun superhero ride. But
yeah, that's written by Tim Seeley. I worked with Tim Seeley over for Devil's Due.
Right.
He's a funny guy.
Didn't you ink the Love Bunny and Mr. Hell, the one with Savage Dragon in it?
Yeah, I did. That was one of the first things I did for them.
Yeah, I remember that. But
yeah, it's a horrible looking book. It's hard for me to look at some of that old stuff, but it was cool.
Yeah, but
I remember thinking how cool it was that he got Erik to let us use the character.
And that's probably about 10 years ago almost at this point, right?
I think it's probably like 2003, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, 10 years ago, a lot changes, so. But Do you talk to any of the other artists on the other Extreme titles, or are you friendly with them, or?
I know some of them a little bit. I think. Well, of course, I know Tim Slave. I don't talk to him too much anymore. I talk to John Malin every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
He's the artist on Youngblood.
Youngblood, yeah. I was actually listening to the Image Addiction podcast that he was on, and I guess, he was talking about the first issue of Youngblood, of the relaunch that he was doing, and he was cracking me up because he's like so harsh on his own work. Like, I guess he's been sitting and staring at this issue for like a year now, whereas, we're out there buying the stuff when it comes out, but he's been working on it for so long that I guess he was finding all these errors or just wasn't happy with some of the way the stuff turned out. But he was being way too harsh on himself on the podcast. But he seemed like a character.
He showed me the art. For his second issue, like back in the fall. Like after they made the announcement. So he's been working on this stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second issue is crazy good. I don't think he used an inker on the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
He tried a digital ink everything, and then I think it was the second issue that he inks. There's actually real inks now, so it's more bolder, and the art's not as grainy. But from what I remember, the second issue was pretty wonderful.
Yeah. So going back to just Supreme, have you read the entire Alan Moore, any of the Alan Moore run, or any of the older stuff? I know, like, again, going back, you were into Supreme, to Image back in the day.
I had the first, 10 or 12 issues of Supreme when it first came out. The old Brian Murray issues.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have any, then skip forward, and then I had some of the later Supreme run by Alan Moore, just a couple issues. It was spotty.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I saw, this was years later, I was kind of out of comics, but I still, saw the same character, saw Alan Moore's name and Albert Liefeld's name on it.
Right.
And then, but once I found out that this is what Erik was planning on, then a buddy of mine had all the comics on a disc. So he gave me the disc. So
that's good.
I've gone back through and read the whole Alan Moore run and everything.
I think it's kind of odd that, Liefeld, and I don't know, maybe there's some kind of logistics issue, but you would think that he would had like the collections ready to go before the relaunch, so that, hey, if you like this and the way this is going, here's, Alan Moore's run right here for, here's 2 or 3 volumes.
I don't know. What the, that had nothing to do with me. That's all,
right.
Rob.
Right.
So I don't know if there's reasons for it not coming out, or if they're going to put it out, or I don't know if they can put it out. I have no idea, what's going on with that. I've heard a lot of people, ask about, how can they get the older issues, because they were interested in the new ones, but they wanted, to read some of the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Erik gets that question a lot too.
Yeah, it's weird to me, but hey, I don't know. Talking about Alan Moore, and he started off with the first issue of the relaunch was the Alan Moore written issue, and I know it got a lot of hype. Did you notice much of a change or a drop off when Alan left, and a change in reader reviews, or do people seem, from what you've talked to them, are they happy with it, or?
I hear good things about it. I think a lot of people picked up the first issue because they're just Moore fans and they wanted to complete their run, or they just wanted something with Alan Moore's name on it. But most people I know didn't pick it up for that reason. They just picked it up because it's a new book, and it just happened to be the last script that Alan Moore wrote was for the art launch issue.
Yeah,
that was just something like extra. They didn't pick it up for that reason. So
right.
I don't know. I'm sure you can ask different people different questions like that. Someone that picked up just for Alan Moore. I don't know if a lot of people even picked up the second issue.
Right.
I know the sales dropped off, after the first issue. And the only thing I can think of is that it was just, a lot of Moore fans, because it's like it ends on a cliffhanger. So you'd think you'd want the answer, to that question.
Well, that's on comic book retailers making that decision.
Yeah, you're
that's
right.
That's unfortunate. Because they made that decision 2 months before the relaunch issue came out.
Right.
That's
So, but yes, I've heard, everyone's been positive that I've heard. I mean, there's been a couple things said about, the art that I agree with. One of the critiques was that they felt the beginning of issue 63 kind of looked one way, and then it went into like a different style towards the end.
Mhm.
And I can see that myself because when I started working on Supreme, Erik sent me like the layouts for the first 8 pages when we realized we were going to do like a preview book. And then like a month later, he sent me another 10 pages. But it was like a month after he sent me those, I was actually able to work on it. So it was like there's like big gaps between pages that I was working on for issue 63. So I can see the difference in certain pages. So I mean, there's certain things that are said like that I'm kind of surprised that someone picked up on.
Yeah.
But, besides that, I think everything else has been pretty positive.
Yeah. I mean, I think Eric's, the Supreme of all the Extreme books is the one that, pretty much follows closely to what came before it. And
Right.
I don't know if that's a deterrent for people that want to start fresh or if that adds more readers because they like the idea. It could go either way. But, the Alan Moore issue made it pretty easy to kind of jump in. I had no prior knowledge of the Alan Moore Supreme before that issue. And,
Me neither.
Unfortunately, I can't go back and read it because it's not available, to purchase, but I would if it was. But I did jump right into it. I thought it was pretty easy. It's a lot of text, and, it did take me 2 times around to go through it and read it, but, that makes it fun, too, and it makes the, it's nice that it takes more than 5 minutes to read a comic book, But there's...
Oh, yeah, Erik sent me Alan Moore's script with the layouts for that, and I read it, and, my head was hurting after 3 pages. I mean, he repeats, I mean, who am I to ever criticize anything Alan Moore writes? But he does repeat himself a lot.
Yeah.
So like the same things are just being said over and over and over in every panel. And it's just, and he asks for a lot of his artists, from different, he wants specific buildings to be seen in the background. He wants a specific face and someone in the crowd walking in the foreground. He wants the whole panel to be, he directs it, completely.
Yeah, it's like
as I was reading it, I was like, thank God that, Eric's actually laying this issue out because I don't think I could handle it. I would screw it all up.
Well,
It's just like I wouldn't be able to pick apart what are the most important elements because everything is treated, so importantly.
Yeah, we had talked to Erik on a previous FINcast episode about that, and he was just like spent after drawing this issue. He said it was just an incredible amount of work.
Yeah, and I saw the layouts, and it looks like, he really, he's like his hands are like rotating, just getting into motion, sketching something, and he would sketch a figure on that first issue like 20 times before he had to figure where he wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
With the angle, for whatever was in the script.
Right.
And so those were easy for me to like. Actually, there wasn't really any faces, but there was a lot of work trying to get the face to be, the way he wanted.
Right.
And it's just because Alan Moore was asking for so many different things that, I've worked from a bunch of people's scripts for Marvel and stuff, and, it's, I get like 1 sentence or 2 sentences, per panel, and Alan Moore is like 3 paragraphs.
Yeah. And you're coming into this, new to drawing Supreme, and you got to kind of like cut your teeth on Supreme, drawing all these intense panels and a bajillion characters and different Daxes and Supremes. I give you credit, man. It's pretty amazing, Supreme is, it's a book about Supreme, but really it's more like a team book. There's so many different characters, and we've only the relaunch. We're only on the 3rd, issue, and we're just introduced to like a billion characters.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, and there was a couple of mistakes that way too, where Erik would scribble a costume down in one of his layouts, and I draw it in, and then, the next issue or later in the same issue, the person has different boots than what we drew in the first part of the book. So, like, there's certain times where, like, Supreme's costume didn't match up because we're just, there's so many different costumes. Supreme's had so many different costumes himself.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things trying to get the looks right. I'm glad he killed most of the people off, so I don't have to worry about the way they looked or different costumes and shit.
I mean, because you got 4 or 5 different Supremes in the book right now that you have to make sure you keep them looking just at least a little bit different so we can, as a reader, tell who's who.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I think is pretty awesome, was that he wanted the they call him the Mean Supreme or Dick Supreme, but we were just calling him Rob Supreme.
Yeah.
And More Supreme. But, that he wanted Rob Supreme to look, kind of on model. He wanted to look like, the old Rob Liefeld Supreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does look a bit more rendered than everybody else.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was, like I said, I was a huge Rob fan. Back when all those guys were blowing up at Marvel, so I can, harken back to some of that stuff, and it's fun to kind of pull on my Liefeld influences and make those, extra intense faces.
Yeah.
And a lot of those squiggly lines. I mean, that's a lot of fun, and it's cool because I get to do it for a reason.
Right.
Because it's required for this book.
He's got
that. It's pretty awesome.
The trademark Liefeld eyebrows, or the
right. Oh yeah.
The hatching on the forehead, like the curved hatching.
Yep. Oh man, I'm having a blast doing that.
Yeah, it is cool, and it's noticeable, and it's kind of a cool little nod back, Yeah,
I think it really comes together. So, it takes a while trying to figure out someone else's kind of look to keep consistent. Like try to make it look like the Liefeld Supreme from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think issue 65, because he was only in a couple pages for 64, but I think on issue 65 you can see that his face is really taking form over the couple of pages, and it all has like that hint of Liefeld. And there's some pages where he's like really intense, and I think it, and then the other one is, of course, is the More Supreme. And Erik wanted him to have like a little smoother. I can't pull off a Chris Sprouse.
Right.
I mean, he's like crazy good. He's like good in ways that I'll never be. He's it's just a different part of his brain that he uses. But I'm still trying to go in there and making sure that his face is a little bit smoother and a little bit longer.
Yeah, a little more classic.
His hair is a little bit more. Right.
Yeah, it comes off though. So, it's well done. And the thing I like about the Supreme book is let's just start by saying a lot of people jump into this being like, a return to Mean Supreme. I don't really want to see that, but they're not giving the book a chance and seeing that it's more like, I think how Erik put it, it's like, General Ross chasing the Hulk, where you have the team of powerless Supremes chasing after Mean Supreme, which is a pretty cool.
Right, yeah. I think a lot of people got the impression that he was killing off everything previously that Moore did and just bringing the old version of Supreme back, and that's not what he did at all. He combined them. He brought, I thought it was so cool that his brainchild, his idea was to make it so that there actually are two different versions.
Right.
Because up until that, it was never like that. It was never talked about. You just always assumed that the More Supreme was the old Supreme, just a different take on the character.
Right.
Erik had it, so it separated the two, and that just seems, that's just ingenious, I think. But he didn't kill them all off. I think, that rumor kind of went around for a long time before, last issue came out and you found out that some people actually did survive.
Right.
So I think that kind of maybe killed some people's interest, or maybe some of the Moore fans who had no, interest going along with this new character, which is the old Liefeld version,
right,
as opposed to the characters that they read about.
Right.
Which is unfortunate because they're still very much part of the book.
Exactly.
And they're like half the book.
And it is a cool little dynamic. I like how he's got the kind of anamorphic characters, and it kind of is like almost like a nod to like the old Captain Marvel comics where you got like a lion character or a mouse guy kind of running around with a bunch of like normal looking humans, and it kind of makes it more like, hey, it's a comic book, anything goes, and that's a lot of what I like about.
Yeah, it just makes it more absurd. That's why I think it's great.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm working on a book that has a guy that has a character who looks like Mickey Mouse, a guy with a lion head, and a duck.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I'd work on a book that has those things in it.
And in classic Erik Larsen tradition, he takes these classic ideas of a cartoon character and an anthropomorphic character, and then he puts a how would a person deal with this in real life spin on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absurd and it's amazing. It's like, the thing about Supreme, it's like there's so many different things going on. It's a violent book, but there's a lot of drama involved with these characters. And then you got, the crazy stuff, and you got the stuff that pulls on from the Larsen universe, like this issue. Super Patriot plays a pivotal part since him and Supreme were part of the Allies together. I mean, and then you know what's coming up. I'm sure you've seen the preview covers. So I mean, there's just so many different characters, and there's so many things that can be pulled from past Image incarnations of these characters, as well as current characters like Super Patriot and Omni-Man, and just a bunch of stuff. I'm just surprised that. I mean, this is the kind of book that I would be, I was freaking out about when I found out about it.
Right.
It's Larsen on Life of Supreme. I mean, that's just craziness.
Yeah. Or just
that's the thing like 10 years ago that just blow your mind.
Yeah. It's probably because 10 years ago they weren't even talking to each other for a while.
Right.
But just even Erik on any other comic, especially a creator-owned type comic besides Savage Dragon, where he can just kind of run wild on something new, is pretty cool.
Right.
And I think your style complements his style really well. It's a great, you still, like, I can see in his layouts, I can still see his stuff kind of coming through, but you kind of give it your own flavor too, and it works really well. And I think that's, reading all the reviews for it, I think that's one of the major things that people have said is that your styles have really, really meshed well together.
Yeah, it's cool. I think every issue our styles hook in, more completely. There were some weird spots, getting up to this point, and there still are some weird spots. But I think I think the art's a lot tighter for this third issue, or issue 65, than the previous two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool because, like you said, there's certain things that you just know are totally Larsen.
Mm-hmm.
Certain shots with the fist coming forward, or the guy, different angles that he just screams Larsen. Even if like the details are like my details, it hits you as a Larsen book, but the details are just a little bit different,
Yeah, Larsen.
And that's the kind of blend that I wanted to do. I wanted to feel like a Larsen comic, even if the details didn't look like a Larsen, because I can't pull off the way he would ink himself.
Yeah.
If I tried to do it that way, then it'd just be a poor imitation.
Well, and I don't think that necessarily. I know I don't want to see that. I mean, I get that every month from Savage Dragon. I want to see a new take. I like, like Savage Dragon 100 when it came out with all those backup stories with a different artist inking Larsen. I thought that was fantastic.
Right.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoy it. Like I enjoy seeing Kirby's stuff inked by different inkers. Each inker brings something different to the table. Again, in your case, you're doing more pencils and inks, but it.
Right. It'd be different if I was working from tighter pencils. I've already let Erik know that post Supreme, if he ever wants to do something, whether we working this way or me actually working over his fuller pencils, I'm always down for that. I would love to ink his stuff straight up. That wasn't really what the job was offered to me for Supreme.
Yeah.
I was always supposed to be working over his layouts.
Mm-hmm.
But, if there's something where, he'd do a little bit more fuller pencils, so, it would be his lines that I'm translating instead of adding my own.
Right.
I'm always down for that, too.
Right. Are you throwing in any little Easter eggs on your own end that aren't in, like, the layouts? I know, I think it was on 63. I seen, in the comic book shop, there were a lot of comics where you had, I noticed one for sure was, the Heracles comic, which I thought that was probably odd. It's pretty subtle stuff. I don't, I'm not go crazy with anything. Yeah.
Like comics on the wall is, it's not really an Easter egg. I mean, it kind of belongs there.
Yeah.
Sometimes, people hide things and it's, so obvious or, it's so out of place.
Yeah.
So, there's, just little things like that in the comic shop. There's a callback scene in issue 66 coming up from the same comic shop.
Uh-huh.
And it's almost like the same page, only, with different characters. But I got to go back in again and do a bunch of different comics. So, that was pretty cool. There have been a couple spots where, I've put in people, but, in the, so tiny, not even, a pinky nail.
Yeah.
But I know that they're care people I know, real life people. They don't know never who they are. But I do put in stuff like that as people in the crowd.
Yeah, I get a kick out of that. I think Ryan Otley does that a lot with Invincible. He'll put in other artists or something like that.
Right. I mean, the most obvious one is probably that last splash page with all the different Daxes coming through the portal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. On Eric's layout, he did a couple of these, but he didn't. He did. Let me think. There's like a Mr. Fantastic one.
Yeah, Thor or.
And then I think he did a Wolverine or a Thor or somebody like that. And then for some reason I went in there and I added like 30 more.
Yeah, you got like.
I was like, oh, that's a yeah. So I didn't really think it was going to be so obvious. But when you're working on a big page, you find a lot of little spots to put things. And then when you see it shrunk down, like the focus, you see every single one. It's just so obvious. And then when I saw the colors from Steve, it's like he colored them exactly the way that the Marvel characters are colored. So it wasn't so much an Easter egg as it was I just, usurped half of the Marvel Universe and put them in Supreme.
That's amazing. That's got to be a crazy job for Steve Oliff to color, especially the issues with like the bajillion Daxes and Supremes.
Yeah, I think he's happy there killed everybody off too.
Yeah. Cool. And I noticed.
When we did the.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, he does a great job with all the fine details. I mean, he's an amazing colorist. I mean, for as cool as it is to work with Erik, which is like a dream come true, to have on top of that have Steve Oliff be the colorist. I mean, it's just Rob Liefeld Supreme. With the first issue being Alan Moore script, it's just an insane stack of dominoes that fell.
Right. So
stuff is
just to talk about the newest Supreme issue, which is out this week. Which by the time we get this out, is probably be out for a week already.
Yeah, it comes out tomorrow.
Yeah. So by the time our FINcast episode airs, it'll probably be a week from now. But there's a lot going on, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, you open up, like we talked about, that splash page with all the different Supremes out there. Who's your, up to this point, who's your favorite Supreme character, hero or villain, to draw?
Well, I'm having a lot of fun, like I said before, on the Liefeld version of Supreme, just because I get to pull on some old influences.
Yeah.
I'm having a blast, doing Squeak and Silver Age Supreme with the lion head, and I mean that's just stuff that I would never normally draw on a almost daily basis. So it's cool that over the pages I'm starting to get the feel for how their faces move and work from different angles. So those are all, and of course I love drawing Darius Duck. was a good one.
So you've got to be happy that he survived.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we can talk about that now, right? Yeah, he's in this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fun one, and I think every time I draw him, he gets a little bit better. He was kind of rough looking at first, but he's a fun one to draw.
I think Erik cracks me up with his. I'm sure he put this in his layouts, but he always puts a little bit of like cheesecake in it, where he has like the African American Supreme, kind of in like some funny positions, like bent over or whatever, or they're like ass in the air or something.
Oh yeah.
Like that. It's like typical Erik. And I think she's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That page is almost straight up what Erik laid out.
Yeah.
I had some surface details, but there was very little for me to do on that one. I just kind of tightened up some of the lines. So that whole butt shot you're talking about, 100% Larsen there.
She's a great character. She reminds me of like the 70s, like Miss Marvel.
Yeah, she's a fun one to draw. I love doing stuff with texture.
Yeah.
You can notice like when you see things like her afro, or on the next page like the moon.
Yeah.
All the texture and craters. That's the kind of stuff that's the inker in me that gets off on doing all those little texture tricks.
Yeah, that's cool. It is really cool. And just talking about that page with the moon, you get that like Sprouse version Supreme on that panel, and then if you compare it to like the Liefeld Rob Supreme that shows up a couple pages later, you can see such a difference in the way that you pencil and ink that, and it's pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, it's the kind of, I mean, the more I do it, the more, you can see the difference between the two of them. But, the Ralph Supreme has the more dramatic Widow's Peak. And, I mean, even in the issue 66, and that's already done, More Supreme looks, even more different, just, more smooth, and it's just, it's cool to be drawing different versions of the same character. So I really get to mess around. Even their body types is a little bit different.
Yeah. Is the mean Rob Supreme supposed to be an older Supreme?
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I always thought that Supreme was pretty old to begin with.
Yeah.
But the way Sprouse drew him, he looked young and
yeah, he looks like
full of vigor. He just had white hair.
Yeah, he looks like a 27-year-old kind of Superman, whereas like the
right.
Rob Liefeld Supreme I thought, at least when I first started collecting it back in the 90s, he was supposed to be just kind of like the old grizzled Superman.
Right.
Yeah,
I think of him as kind of like this, kind of more Clint Eastwoodish, massively huge and angry, and then, but then the Al Moore is still kind of more like the Superman, just the more, late 20s, early 30s, kind of character.
Right. I did love, and I'm assuming this is Eric's layouts, but the battle, although it being brief, but between Super Patriot and Supreme, really kind of harks back to like the early battles between Savage Dragon and Super Patriot. Like, I'm talking about the one shot where Super Patriot's shooting a gun out of his foot, which he hardly ever does.
Yeah.
And it's got that
shading. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's got the shading where, you can just see his goggles and the ponytail.
Yes, yep.
And that's kind of like a callback to me to the earlier issues of Savage Dragon, which I thought, Super Patriot came off as such a badass, and, I really enjoyed that panel. I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, that panel was awesome. I got the same feeling when I got his layouts, and I saw the way he had that sketch in there. So it's cool for me to hook up and sink in with certain things, like you said, because I recognize it as being, an old school shot too. That's one of the things that, like I said, like his character Super Patriot off, because you do things like that where the goggles could be seen in the black or in the shadow.
Yeah.
And with the million bullet shells, off to the side and everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's cool. It wouldn't happen like years later when everybody's like moved far on. I'm gonna look back at this and realize how friggin' awesome it was that I actually got to work, with Erik Larsen and actually do panels like the one we're talking about, where it's like that's one of those shots that's just pure 100% Larsen.
Yeah, stuff you were looking at probably when you were 13 years old, And,
oh yeah.
And now you're penciling over it. But
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it took a long time to get to this point from being a kid trying to get going. So it seems kind of natural now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that there's going to come a time when it's like I'm going to just be thinking and be like, wow, I actually got to work with these people on this book, and it's going to be pretty powerful. Right now it's still it's my present. So you just work, you just get it done, you do what you got to do.
Right.
But when I have a chance to think about it, it's just one of those things that's going to seem so much cooler as time goes on. It's not going to get any less cool.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think of it as the same way as probably when Larsen was coming up in the business and being able to, work on Thor with Stan Lee or something like that, It's
right.
Probably the same kind of deal. But yeah, but the new issue of Supreme, I can't recommend it enough. It's a really fun issue. The book's catching its stride.
For me, working on this issue 65 is the one that kind of really felt like our first issue. With 63 being Alan Moore's script, and 64, even though that was the first one Erik wrote, it was just like an answer to, the big cliffhanger that Alan Moore left things on. This is like the one where it really feels like now you know where the story's going, and these characters go in different directions. This is the one that I think is the one that feels most to me like the first issue of our run.
Yeah, it's like you almost got your kind of origin story out of the way. You know where you stand, and now the adventures can begin,
Exactly.
Cool. So I know you're pressed for time. You got a lot of work going on. You have we talked prior to this, and you're inking a bunch of pages for Avengers Academy. So I just wanted to ask you a few more questions before we wrapped up, and I don't know if Jim had any additional questions he wanted to get in, but
Okay.
No, actually, Craig, you asked the main question I was going to ask, which character was the most fun to draw. So, Craig, if you got any more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's your convention schedule like? Are you hitting the circuits on the East Coast, or?
Probably not the East Coast. Well, I'm probably going to Mid Ohio Convention. I think that's in September.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Wizard World Chicago. I think I'm going to the Mid Ohio Convention. And then I think that's it as far as cons.
Yeah.
For the rest of the year, I'm doing some store events and some store signings and stuff, and then I'm doing some smaller shows. I'm doing one in Kokomo, Indiana, and I think there might be one other one, but I don't think there's anything past Columbus.
Right. You got to get to the East Coast, Baltimore. I don't know if you've ever been to the Baltimore Comic Con, but that's always a blast. There's always a big image presence there.
Is that a 2-day con?
Yeah, 2 or 3. I think it might be 3, like a Friday night. But.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully there's more time for me to do more cons. I did more stuff this year than I've done in previous years, just because I want to try to get out there and try to promote and push the cream as much as possible.
Right.
But I've always kind of stayed in the Midwest area, going from Columbus all the way through to Iowa, like on Cedar Falls. I go out there quite a bit.
Right.
So I have like a 5 or 6 hour radius that I travel around from where I live.
Yeah.
Just so I can keep it within driving distance.
Yeah, because you got to fit your work in with that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And are you selling any of your original artwork for Supreme for those who might be interested, or?
I sold a couple pages.
Yeah.
So far. I'm sure you know who some of them went to.
Yeah, I do know actually that, yeah.
Yeah. But, I haven't sold too many. I don't really want to, sell too many of them if I can help it.
Right.
I mean, sometimes, it's the art sales is what makes up for when there's a gap between books.
Yeah.
So I try to hold on to art until I need to sell it.
Yeah.
But I always like to have it on me, when I do signings or conventions. I always have, at least one portfolio full of stuff.
And it seems like you do a ton of...
I've sold a couple pages.
It seems like you do a ton of commissions, because I've seen a bunch of your commission work.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done a bunch of commissions this year. I took like a week and did like 15 of them heading into a store event. Then I don't think I've done anything since then.
Are you open?
Yeah,
Are you open for commissions right now?
Yeah, I mean, like not this second, but I mean, I'm always open for commissions, but it could take, as much as like a month or two to get something back from me. I usually don't like to take on commissions until, I actually have like a week or two and I can just bust them all out. But, when I do store signings and conventions, I sit there for 2 or 3 days and just do nothing but sketch and commissions for people.
Cool. And just lastly, the alternate covers. What's the deal with that? I know, like this newest issue, we have 2 covers. I think the one before you did a cover, but we only saw one.
For issue 64, the cover was used as a second printing.
Oh, so did a second printing come out?
I think.
I want to say it came out this week.
Okay.
I want to say it came out alongside. I thought I saw it on a shipping list.
Yeah, I think it came out. I think it might have come out last week or the week before. But I did see it on the. As far as coming out, it was coming out sometime this month.
Oh, good. Because I'm gonna have to.
But I didn't know it was going to be used for the second printing. I did it, and then I found out, when I got my comps that it said second printing on there.
Yeah.
And then this third one, I didn't know if they were going to use or not. And then, I got my comps, and half was Eric's cover, half was my cover. So I'm hoping that means that, it's a 50-50 split. But I think this is the last one. Well, I'm positive this is the last one where there's any cover variants.
I have to say, I buy the Erik Larsen covers just out of habit, but your
Oh, yeah.
cover for 65 is actually a lot more fun.
Thanks.
This particular issue.
That's Eric has done a lot of those, not a lot, a couple of those covers where you see the character's helmet or face dead on, and you see the reflection in it.
Yeah.
I think you just did one with Overlord and Malcolm's reflection in it.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of do like a little play on that, where you see Supreme's reflection in his eyepiece.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I'm glad that they used it.
Yeah, I think it's a win for the book too, because I think just for the collectors out there, I mean, it does give a little push and a little incentive to, hey, let's just grab 2 copies, and helps out,
Right.
indie book. But I like getting all the covers. I just, I enjoy the book, and it's just fun to collect them. But
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fun book for anyone that gives it a chance. And it goes in some weird places, and I mean, I don't know what. For me, it's just the premise itself. Larsen writing Liefeld Supreme is just, nothing else should even need to be said.
Right. It's going to be like Savage Dragon, I think, in terms of you're not going to know where this is going to go from one issue to the next. Anything can happen, and anything will happen, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Right.
Cool. Is there anything you want to plug or add?
No, I got nothing to plug.
Yeah.
Supreme's already out in Avengers Academy, and there's nothing really to. I don't make any more money no matter how much Avengers Academy sells, so I'm not gonna plug that.
Cool. Well, I really want to thank you for spending the last hour with us and talking Supreme. It was a pleasure talking to you. We learned a lot. It was fun.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful experience. It's great having creators on just to talk about their process and their history and how this wacky industry works, and it's really cool.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me, guys, and we'll have to do it again. Maybe, next month when the next issue comes out, we'll have to get together for an hour.
Yeah.
We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah. We'd
love to
have you back.
All right, guys. Hey, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And now we're going to take a look at Savage Dragon 180. Just came out last week. Feels like it's been forever since 179 came out. It's been at least a month and a half, or if not more.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely been over a month, and been chomping at the bit to read it to get to this conclusion of the story arc. So I'm pretty excited to have it in my hands.
Yeah, I mean, 179 left us on a pretty good cliffhanger, if I recall.
Yeah.
With Angel confronting Malcolm with telling him that she wants him to sleep with her. We were all wondering what the heck that was all about.
Right.
But before we get to that, before we even get to that, we look at the cover, and I remember when the solicitation copy for this came out, and we got to look at this cover, and I said it was pretty, I think we all said it was a pretty neat looking cover.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite covers of the whole Savage Dragon series.
Yeah, it's got a lot of neat detail, especially in the background. Sometimes I feel backgrounds get a little bit lost in Savage Dragon. Usually they're like a shape or they're a color. So it's kind of neat to see Erik inking a very detailed background with like all these little pipes and brickwork and cracks and all the sludge in the water.
Right.
It's just kind of cool.
Yeah, I just like the whole composition of it. I mean, and I think it's one of the best drawings of Malcolm that Erik has produced. He just looks badass, and
yeah, definite sense of energy about it. Like something's about to happen.
Right. So when you flip open this page and you see a familiar sight,
this is what the third time we've opened the comic to see this.
I counted 4. If you count the reprint of issue 0 and 150, it's 5 times. Basically, it's, the splash page of that Savage Dragon face, which we first saw in Savage Dragon number 0 with Kerr saying the same exact thing, kill them all, which he was referring to the humans of Earth. And a funny thing to note was the title on this comic is The Way It Must Be. On Savage Dragon number 0, it was actually The Way It Was. So you got The Way It Was and The Way It Must Be.
And we've had, I'm trying to think here, we've had Kerr in issue 0.
Kerr's in 0.
We've had Krull in issue, it must have been during Emperor Dragon at some point.
Well, first we had Kerr in issue 0, and then in issue 150, of course, we had the reprint of 0. And then in issue 153, we had Kerr again, which was like when they revived the mangled up body of Dragon from the Virus Saga. And it wasn't that first splash page, but it was the same image of kind of like Dragon waking up, and it was like that same splash.
That was the last page, right?
I think it was the last page of 153, yeah.
Okay.
And then 167, you get the same page, but it's Krull. It's a obviously younger looking Dragon. His eyes look different, so it's not.
He's saying save them all.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then in this 180, which is kind of a cool little thing, if you flip between 180 and 0, you've noticed, this is Dragon now, which of course is also Kerr, and he's saying the same thing. But if you look at the face, Eric's added quite a few more wrinkles to Dragon between issue 0 and 180. If you look at the issue 0, issue 180, his like forehead's a lot more wrinkled. He's added more wrinkles, kind of like in his neckline, a few more crow's feet lines. So it's kind of cool that he did that, because I didn't catch that at first until I read the issue like a third time and compared it. So I thought that was neat. I am a little sick of seeing the same splash, but it is a good storytelling device. It's just Erik reinforcing that,
Yeah, again, it does feel like, in one hand, it does seem like it's 3 pages wasted out of 20 because it's something we've seen before.
Yeah.
But the truth is, he redraws these every time. These aren't copy-pasted.
Yeah.
If you look at the ship page with the double page spread with the ship,
yeah.
The background is different. It's a different spacescape than we've seen before because it, suggests that the ship is traveling through space.
Yeah, like to go through that real quick, you had, and it's almost the same setup with the ship. The ship's always, I don't know if he's using the same kind of stat like ship image, which I assume he is, and just changing the background. But issue 0 showed Earth, where in the top right hand corner. And then 167 was almost the same with Earth. That was like a red Earth because Kerr kind of poisoned the Earth. It's that same image.
Right.
Issue 175 is kind of like when Dragon kind of woke up out in space, so it's kind of just like a weird shaped planet. And then you get this issue 180, and it's Calyptus. Is that how you say it? Vanguard's planet?
Calyptus sounds right to me.
Yeah, which kind of looks like the Death Star or something like that.
Now that you mention it, if that's Calyptus, I guess it sort of explains which end of the ship is the front end, because it's probably the part that's pointed at the planet. Because
yeah,
remember we talked about that.
That's what I had always assumed. I know that was brought up, but yeah. It makes sense. But I think it is a good storytelling device. I mean, it's kind of just, you're unclear where Kerr ends and Dragon begins in that line. At first you thought it was a real rigid line. There's 2 different sides, and now it just seems like, it's not so clear anymore. Dragon and Kerr are a lot more similar than, maybe we thought in the past.
I'm not sure if I've ever talked about this on the FINcast, but the impression I got when Kerr became the dominant personality, and you got to compare him to Dragon and Dragon's actions, they're both very brutal, very vicious in their tactics, in their techniques.
Yeah.
Dragon he fights for, what am I trying to say? You're right in that they have a lot in common, personality-wise.
Uh-huh.
Basically, they're both ruthless, all right?
Right.
But they're ruthless for different reasons.
Yeah, I think Kerr is more just all about himself, whereas Dragon will fight for his friends and family. Whereas
Right. Dragon's willing to make hard choices. He's willing to decide who lives and dies for the big picture. And Kerr is similar because in a lot of ways he was he wanted to kill Earth for his people.
Yeah.
But he was I guess he's more detached.
Yeah.
He doesn't empathize with anyone who's not him.
Yeah. It's funny, we always talk about like how Robert Kirkman took, a page or two out of the Erik Larsen book of writing comics, and the more we talk about this, the more you can also make that parallel between like Rick Grimes and Savage Dragon, where, Rick Grimes makes the hard decisions to survive in a zombie-filled, apocalyptic world, and it's not always the right decision, but he makes it as the leader. And Savage Dragon, and Erik's been writing Savage Dragon that way for 180 issues. So there's a lot of similarities in that. And he's also made a lot of mistakes, like thinking that he's doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing that have, caused a lot of destruction.
Moving on, we get a resolution to the cliffhanger from last issue, and Malcolm is pretty much baffled at Angel's turn.
Yeah.
At her view of the situation, apparently. She's got a very nihilistic view. Basically, she's convinced that they're all going to die and there's nothing that they can do about it. I'm not sure I'm happy with this evolution of her character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Angel as a character, from her power set to her history to, being a hero. And I don't know, it's weird because one of the major reasons I like Savage Dragon so much is that it has so many strong female characters.
Yeah.
And so when you have a character like Angel suddenly seem to come across as weak, I guess, it just doesn't really feel right.
Yeah, and especially since, all they've been through with, being out in Dimension X or, fighting Kerr and thinking it was the end there, you would think that, by this time she would just be strong enough and be like, look, we've kind of beat the odds many times before,
Like, I had similar problems with her mom when she lost her powers and became just a complete basket case of worry.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of made sense, but at the same time, I don't know, it didn't really click with me as a character trait.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel right. I mean, I could buy it, and I mean, I think it worked in the end.
Right.
But I do hope this is like Angel's low point and she crawls out of it at some point.
The one thing that, I can say about it is that it kind of reinforces like that all hope is lost in the story, having a character that's like, oh man, let's just give up. I mean, we see it a couple of times. We see it, a couple more pages in with Rex that everyone's just like, you know what, we're screwed. There's nothing that we can do. And it gives you that
screwed, let's screw.
Yeah, it gives you that sense of, wow, like, if these guys are giving up, then we're doomed unless something crazy happens.
I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, it's supposed to paint a picture of things being very dire.
Yeah. And I do like how Malcolm kind of takes the reins and is like, screw that. I'm not laying down. I'm literally. He's like, we're going to find a way to, figure this out and save the day.
I don't know. Part of me kind of wishes that the roles were reversed, that Malcolm was the one.
Yeah.
Thinking that all hope was lost and Angel was, leading the way.
Yeah, I could see that working.
I don't know, but that's just me, wishful thinking on my part. I mean, the book is Malcolm's, and Malcolm's got to be the hero, and
right.
I don't know.
No, I hear that. So we get a few more cameos coming up, and we see Mighty Man, who is Betty Bradford, of course, is Nurse Anne's daughter, who's got the Mighty Man powers. So I'm assuming it's just like, it's a baby with the Mighty Man powers, so she's probably just flailing around, just knocking out aliens left and right.
Whatever happens to get in range, just throwing a tantrum.
Right.
Would not want to be the babysitter.
So, and it's just like, I think it's just, Eric trying to progress the story, showing like Malcolm and Angel kind of just walking. I think this issue is a lot of them just kind of walking down the streets and just seeing all this crazy crap going down. And then they cut to the gods, and we see it's like, oh no, man, one of my favorite gods, that little white guy that's got the little like air jet skis, gets torn in half. I love that dude.
Yeah, he's one of those background characters. And didn't alternate Angel steal his shoes once? I think that was like a whole issue.
Yeah.
At one point,
That was what
the flying shoes incident from like.
And Dragon puts on like the little web shooters and goes and saves him.
Right.
So I like that dude. It's too bad he had to go.
The guy with the horns in the background, he's like, his facial expression just cracks me up because he's like, did this just happen?
Yeah.
What's going on?
His head's just flying around. Whoops. And then you get Thor and Hercules fighting side by side, and Thor is, of course, still blinded. If you remember, he was blinded in his fight with Kerr in issue 163, and Kerr kind of just took his fingers and popped his eyes in. So I'm wondering how Thor gets around these days, not being able to see anything.
I don't know. Got to imagine being a god, he's got good hearing.
So, Hercules is about, as big of an enemy of Thor as Dragon is. Thor hates Dragon and Hercules, so to see them fighting together is kind of something cool to see.
Then we get a really cool splash page on the next page with Overlord.
Yeah.
Going, nuts, just blowing up aliens, standing on top of a corpse pile.
Yeah, a ton of vicious circle goons. And from what I've heard, Gavin Higginbotham, who you guys would know from, he's a host on the FINcast. He hasn't been with us in a while, but he's a regular on the forums, and he helps Erik out a lot with some of the more obscure vicious circle guys that haven't shown up in a while. But he helped Erik pick out a bunch of. From what I heard, he helped Erik pick out a bunch of these old vicious circle goons to bite it. A lot of these guys haven't shown up since the gang war issues during the 20s. When did the gang war happen? Like
30s? I don't know.
No, I think it was like mid 20s. But anyway, there was.
Was it that early?
What's that?
I was just thinking if it was in Archives 1 or Archives 2.
Yeah, well, there was a ton of guys that kind of showed up for a panel or two just to kind of give you an idea of, the size of the Vicious Circle. And then we kind of really never saw them again. And, they're all here pretty much getting wasted, just kind of showing you that they're probably battling the aliens, and the aliens just kind of made a mess of all of them with, only Overlord standing on a pile of corpses. If Gavin was here, he could name every single one of those guys.
Oh, I'm sure he could. Something I just realized about this page, this splash page, it's full bleed.
Yeah, it's something we haven't seen in a while, I don't think.
Right. I think I talked about this a couple of issues ago, that while Erik has been for years now doing his full page splash pages in like a box like they used to do in the Silver Age, because they didn't have the technology to do the full page bleeds.
Yeah.
So he was emulating that. As best I can tell, except for perhaps the double page spread earlier in the book, which is a full bleed as well, of course. And every time it shows up, it's a full bleed.
The spaceship.
But it's the first, it's the spaceship double page spread, right? I believe every time that page has happened, it's been a full bleed as well. But this is like the first time outside of that we've seen a full page spread.
Yeah.
And I think I commented previously that while I appreciate the Silver Age style of the other way he was doing it, I love this. Going all the way to the edges, it just makes it, boom, explode.
I agree. I enjoy the full bleed splashes as well.
Yeah, I couldn't see this panel working in a box.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a gorgeous panel. It really is.
Should make it a poster. I'd buy that poster.
Yeah. And to just kind of move on past that, the next page we see the, what do you call them, the Dreadheads? Is that what they're called? Dread Knights, kind of robots.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious where they came from, because Didn't Eurus die?
No, I think he's still kicking around.
I kind of forget how that all shook out. It was a while
Yeah,
ago.
he's not dead. He's still around. I thought he was in prison, but I don't think he was. I think, a couple issues back, maybe 10 or 15 issues back, they had an interview with him in the pages, and he was kind of just trashing Dragon. But yeah, I don't recall where he stands at this point. I was thinking though, how cool would it have been to see like a splash of like Dread Knight and Overlord back to back, kind of wasting aliens, two kind of like Doctor Doom-esque characters looking. That would have been kind of a neat, like, supervillain team up.
That would have been a bit like the Hercules Thor back to back.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been
that would have been neat.
A cool little like dynamic.
Then Overlord could have blown Dread Knight's head off.
Yeah. And we see the Groks come back, and for those who...
Yeah, we just talked about them, too.
We did.
They come crawling up out of the water. There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and apparently it's they're under Mako's command because he wasted King Garf, who is the kind of the Atlantean king now. So this is the second kind of Atlantean king that Mako's disposed of now.
He's got a taste.
Yeah, so they're kind of launching out of the water, and the Groks, which are these giant, creatures, are just kind of jumping out of the water and grabbing all the Tyranian spaceships and just making a mess out of them, I guess. And then we get a page that's kind of Erik kind of flashing back, showing other heroes in the action. And we see Supreme. It looks a little odd to me. I don't know if...
Well, it's weird because we were just talking about this in the interview that sometimes we don't understand how much Cory Hamscher comes through in doing his Supreme work. Yeah. And here we have a pure Erik Larsen Supreme who doesn't look like he's on model with what's going on over in Supreme.
Yeah, he looks
I can't tell if that's intentional or what, but it does kind of draw a comparison between just what exactly Cory does.
Right. We see Supreme, we see Mudman, we see Madman, and we see Ant. And I know a lot of people on the forums are like, oh, why the hell is Ant in here, And I thought it was a weird choice as well. I think I've heard Erik talk about this in the past, and I think he really likes the design of Ant. But it was a weird choice for me seeing that. Ant was in Image Comics, and I think Erik said, yeah, like Dragon and Arachnid have both appeared in Ant, so, basically, like, why not? But, I just feel like there were a ton of other characters he could have put in there that were way better than Ant. Again, it's his call, but, right. Savage Dragon characters have appeared in Jay Faber's books, like Dynamo 5 and stuff like that. It would have been cool to see some of those guys, or, I don't know, maybe like Glory or Youngblood or Bloodstrike, some of the Extreme Universe guys in there besides Supreme. But
I got a pretty good idea that when Ant was at Image and Erik let the Ant creator use Dragon and Arachnid, there was like a gentleman's agreement that at some point he would be allowed to use Ant and Savage Dragon.
Yeah.
So he's probably just getting that out of the way.
Yeah.
Since using her in any other major capacity would probably never happen.
Right. Yeah, it's just weird, because it seems like an odd choice to me. I don't think that book's being published anymore. And there's
I sometimes see solicitations for it. It like tries to make an appearance and then it disappears again.
It's just weird. I mean, it just seemed like there's a ton of other characters he could have used. It seemed like an odd choice, and I know I wasn't the only one to say that. So anyway,
I will say that seeing Mudman is kind of weird because Jack Staff, who is also created by Paul Grist, awesome comic, read Jack Staff. It's amazing. Plug.
Yeah.
It's just weird because I don't think Mudman and Jack Staff exist in the same universe in Jack Staff and Mudman.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that. So,
whatever. I guess we can just call this a different dimension, probably, where they do. Who knows? I guess it's not that important, right?
Also read Mudman.
Yeah, I got the first issue. I never. There's just too much stuff coming out that I never was able to catch up with the other stuff. With the rest of the Mudman issues. What are they up to? Number 3 or 4?
4. Which is remember when we were talking about books getting late and losing their momentum? see Mudman.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with Jack's staff too.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's so it's annoying is the wrong word. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Paul Grist is an amazing storyteller, and he is a dynamite artist. But it's so time-consuming to make these comics.
Yeah.
All it can do is fall behind, and when comics don't come out on time, people just lose interest.
Right.
And the sales drop, and that's all she wrote.
Definitely. Moving on, we see Super Patriot kind of coming back. I know in the issue before that we saw the SOS kind of getting slaughtered, didn't we? Didn't we see a bunch of guys?
Well, we see most of SOS slaughtered right now.
Yeah, we see them all. Well, sometimes it's unclear. Like, are they laying there knocked out or are they slaughtered? But I think in the issue before we saw a lot of them getting torn apart and whatever.
I want to say Race and Buttress definitely got gutted last issue.
So, I don't know what's going on there. At least we know Super Patriot's still alive and kicking. And that's a pretty cool shot of him. Erik doesn't always show, shots of Super Patriot with, a bunch of different guns and stuff coming out of him. Usually he just kind of shows his hands as guns. And it's kind of neat that he has all these little guns coming out of his legs and everything.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, there's some really good one-panel action bits in this issue. It's really cool sometimes.
Yeah. The next page, I like the top panel of that page because it's kind of like Angel and Malcolm side by side, and I think Erik's getting real comfortable with drawing Malcolm's face, and it's real distinct and different than his father's. I think Erik's getting more comfortable and a lot better at drawing the African American facial features of Malcolm.
Yeah,
you can definitely tell that he's Malcolm and not Dragon.
Dragon, right? He definitely has some of his mom's look to him,
which is cool. I didn't really like the next panel. I mean, I know a lot of people got a kick out of it. Thought it was pretty funny. They busted into Rex's laboratory to try to get his help on, getting rid of the aliens, and they walk in on him screwing Hortus. And I just thought it was a little over the top and silly. I mean, I guess that's what Erik was going for, but
I don't know. Savage Dragon has been over the top and silly.
Yeah, I know, but it's just, I don't know. It seemed a little much. It's like the end of the world. I mean, don't they have a daughter? Where's Dixie Dexter?
Exactly.
Wouldn't they be with her at the end of the world or something like that? And I'm probably overanalyzing it and whatever, but just thought it was a little weird, and I didn't know what your take was on that.
No, I agree. It's one of those little things about this issue that definitely bugged me.
Yeah.
It feels like it's too cramped.
Yeah.
When the invasion started, the last two issues ago when the aliens first showed up, started causing trouble. Last issue they were running around trying to fight, and this issue's the end. And frankly, I don't think 3 issues was nearly enough to tell a really compelling story.
Yeah, I agree.
Out of that setup. No, there was definitely details that could have made this great, and instead leave it, fairly straightforward.
Yeah, my big problem is that the aliens don't have any kind of figurehead to talk for them. They just come off as a bunch of dumb bugs, and it's whatever. They're slaughtering a bunch of people. It's you're freaking out because you don't know who's going to survive. But it would have been nice to have another kind of supervillain, or some kind of headpiece to speak for the Tyranian race to kind of, get an idea of what's going on to give you that kind of face of the invasion.
Right. There's no Kree Supreme Intelligence, or there's no whoever leads the Skrulls, or there's nothing like that in this story. It's just, well, in a lot of ways, that's what the Vanguard backup's for.
Right. Yeah.
I guess it gives the aliens more of a voice and a motivation, and we're more seeing the actual battle itself. And I guess that's kind of cool, where the backup and the main story kind of create this all-encompassing whole.
Right.
But at the same time, we'll probably get to it as we keep going here.
Mm-hmm.
But the main flaw of this story that I'm seeing is that Malcolm and Angel don't seem to have any relevance to how it all shakes out. They survive like everyone else survives, and I think that's kind of unfortunate when they're the lead characters of a superhero comic. And I know that, Savage Dragon often bucks trends.
Right.
And that's what makes it so great. But in this case, it's distracting.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with all of that. I know some guys over on the Savage Dragon forum, were totally thrilled with this issue. I was in the camp where I was a little bit let down by this issue, and we can talk more about that. But let's get through to the ending and then kind of discuss.
What it means.
Yeah, I mean, just to skip through the next couple of pages, it just kind of Erik.
Well, before we skip forward, the last little bit here with Malcolm and Rex, where basically Angel jumps to, "Hey, Dragon met God once. We'll get God to help."
Yeah.
And then Malcolm goes, "That was a dream, Angel. There is no God." And I think that's an interesting character trait, that Malcolm also doesn't believe in God like his father.
Right.
But then Rex apparently is the man with the plan, and he's convinced that God, or at least a God, exists, and that might be able to help.
Right. Which I guess, kind of makes sense, because this universe takes place where there's Thor and Hercules, living on Earth. So there's got to be some kind of knowledge of Zeus or Odin or something, So I just don't know how, we've never seen Rex kind of contact the gods in any way before, I don't think. Yeah. So this is kind of like a weird, thing that he's like, oh, that's not true, so we'll find out, hopefully find out how he's gonna contact God or whatever.
Then we get some more destruction with some more quick cameos. We see
Star, Big Red.
Yeah, Big Red and Star back in costume, presumably because of how bad things are. And do you know who this guy with the hair and the bow tie is? He seems familiar.
I was gonna ask you. He's definitely showed up before, and I don't know.
He's not the talk show host, is he?
I don't think so. I think he was one of the scientists that were working on trying to find out Dragon's origin or something like that. Okay. I don't know, though. I have to go. If Gavin was here, you can answer it in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let me get a quick shot of Zeke, and I think this is Wildstar.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. And the guy getting his head munched is another one of those vicious circle goons. I do like the last kind of 4 panels on this page here, where it's kind of like you're seeing the aliens kind of killing guys, and then kind of just glances back and he's kind of like looking at Malcolm, because the last panel is just Malcolm being like, oh crap. It's like you're seeing it through his eyes. You see like the thing turn around, stare Malcolm in the eyes, and kind of lunge forward towards him. At least that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I guess layout or sequence. Yeah, it's sequence. And then Deus Ex Machina. In this case,
literally. Yeah. Another full bleed.
Yep. Very cool. All God is. I'm honestly, how much do we know about All God? I mean, he was definitely he was involved when Jennifer and Dragon went to God World the first time. We saw him there. He was the one who sent them home.
Right. Yep. And I think, and this was also brought up on the forums, I think and it makes sense to me, I think he's just a manifestation of like all the gods.
Well, all of the head gods. He's like Zeus and Odin and
who knows, Krishna or a Christian god. Who knows? Like a ton of different gods.
Joseph Smith, probably.
If you look at that splash page, there's like one of the heads is like kind of like one of the
Atlantean.
It's Atlantean, or is that like Vanguard's head kind of there?
Oh, okay, you're right. No, you're right. That is a Vanguard head.
Calypton head or whatever. So,
It's a Lipton head, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if it's all the gods throughout the universe or whatever it is. So that's something to keep in mind if he's just kind of like a projection of all the gods into one kind of being.
Well, I've always kind of assumed it's not so much that he's a projection of all the gods; he is just all of the
Gotcha.
gods. I mean, a lot of your mythological gods actually have physical form. They're not, I guess what's the word, omnipresent like the Christian God. They're actually they're immortal in the sense they're ageless, but gods get killed all the time in mythology. Right. They're mortal enough to die, or at least go to hell, or have various sexy adventures on Earth, whatever. But I kind of assume he's just the one guy, but he just contains all the power of all those gods. He's the physical manifestation of the belief in these gods.
Right.
I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I guess only Erik knows how he how this character works, but
gotta wonder where he was when Universo was going to eat the world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that
would have been cool. Universo versus All God,
right.
A throwdown.
Right. I mean, and that just goes. That's another thing. I don't like the ending of this issue. I don't like this Deus Ex Machina kind of all God coming and saving the day, because it's just too easy. It's he, like you said, why didn't Rex summon All God when Universo was around?
Thing is, there's no actual suggestion that Rex summoned him. Rex mentions him.
That's true.
And then he shows up.
That's true.
There's like this entire issue worth of stuff that could have happened where Angel and Malcolm are transported by Rex to Godtown, and they have to plead to All God to intercede, and you could make 10 more pages of story out of that, and then Malcolm and Angel are the heroes, but All God is still the magic bullet that saves the day.
Right.
It's like it just seems like there's a missing story chunk here, and I think that's unfortunate to something that should have been epic in scale, because it is epic. I mean, there's lots of explosions going on here, and there's his All God fighting aliens.
Yeah.
But it literally takes 2 pages to wrap this up.
Well, yeah, it's like All God shows up and just kind of makes all the spaceships pop. Basically, he just blows them all up. He's got some kind of cosmic power. He's just blasting the aliens all around, and then it seems like it drains him. So he's kind of just all bent over, drained of his energy. And it's like two like U.S. Air Force jets come by and drop nukes or something on him. I don't know.
They probably just shot him with regular missiles. It kind of is like a callback to when Osama bin Laden
and
came
that's
back.
Another thing I didn't like about this issue. It's the Osama bin Laden thing happened 3 issues earlier, and it was basically the same thing. You get a giant monster kind of
monster man,
and they blow him up with jets come in, shoot missiles at him, blow him up. That just happened 3 issues ago. So I don't know. To kill a god like that, I guess his power was drained or whatever. The only other thing I can think of is like what people had mentioned on the forums, that they said.
Of course, they may not be jets because I'm looking at them. They're kind of not jet shaped. They're kind of squiggles.
Yeah. Flying squiggles.
Classic Erik Larsen shorthand for background details. It's kind of hard to tell what they are.
Well, regardless.
As far as we know, they could be like the highest tech SOS jets.
Yeah, and I don't think that's really important, but
it's not really.
And that's the other thing. Maybe this All God thing was just a projection of all the gods, so it might not. He might not be dead. He might just have. His projection has just been destroyed, and Of
course, if he is dead, I'm sure the rest of the gods won't be too pleased.
Exactly. I don't know what that. What we're gonna see from that. Although I know in interviews I've read about this issue with Erik that Erik's not. It seems like he's gonna be going more the street level story and getting away from these big, encompassing giant melees, giant, world wars. I think it's getting hard for him to top the next story. I mean, there's only so many times you can destroy the whole world and level Chicago.
Right. I can totally understand that. And I think this book definitely needs to take a step back and start developing characters again.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they look back at the early run of Savage Dragon, they see it as their the best run, because for everything the comic is, back in the early days, it took its time to build up its characters.
Exactly.
And then when things happen to them, you care.
I mean, and the other thing is it took time to build up stories. I mean, he would have subplots going, 10 to 15 issues before they actually acted out, And then you'd be like, oh, that's why this character did this, and, and I used to enjoy that. We see less and less of that.
Yeah, there's still stuff like that going on. I mean, Overlord's still out there, that question mark, but sometimes it feels that those sorts of questions get relegated to the background.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if this was back in the day, about 10 to 15 issues ago, you would have seen Rex working on some kind of weird machine, and someone being like, "What are you working on?" And him being like, "Oh, don't worry about it." And then come this issue, it would have been like, the big reveal that the machine was a device to communicate with All God or something like that. You know what I mean? But there would have been clues and not just, it seems like spur of the moment. Like Erik used to, in his older issues, I think was really good at kind of dropping clues that would actually mean something when the time came. And I don't see that as much anymore.
Well, let's wrap this up. We're getting near the end. We get a quick touch back with what's going on with Vanguard and the backup in Savage Dragon with Vanguard. Basically, the invaders are running, and Vanguard is saying, we're going to kill them all, wipe them out, because he is pissed.
Yeah, that's kind of echoing what Dragon said in the beginning of the episode, basically, wipe them out, every last one of them. Dragon saying, kill them all.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, we get back to Dragon, and it looks like he employed the same kind of devices that Kerr employed to wipe out humans, is like that red misting stuff.
Right, the ones he used in the alternate reality but didn't get to use now. So they're still laying around, I guess. I guess they just packed them up.
Yeah, or he just knows how to make new ones, I don't know.
But see, this is what's interesting, okay? With All God showing up, saving the day on Earth, it's a little sudden. It's like, it feels like it comes out of nowhere, unsatisfying. But here we get one panel of these things putting the gas in the atmosphere. You know what's going on because it's been previously set up before. Right. And you can believe that in the since we last saw Dragon in the issue, he's implemented this plan and it's believable. Right. See, in this case, he can wipe out the entire species on a planet in a single panel, and it feels right, like it's something that can happen. We've
seen it, yeah.
Like we've seen it. There's a setup, but it doesn't work when it's All God coming out of nowhere. It's kind of interesting that you got those two moments in the same issue. One works and the other doesn't.
And we get basically Krull telling Dragon that he's not going to stand for genocide, and Dragon's stance is, let's just wipe out all these guys. They're just pretty much nothing but bugs, and they're destroying everything else. We got to get rid of them. But I guess the Krylin or Krillian, or however you'd say, I guess they're called Krillins or Krylins. Dragon's race is all about
Krylins. Peace and understanding, and
right. And I guess they don't ever
being naive.
They don't kill at all, I guess. So Krull's, I guess, at the point where he's had enough, and he basically challenges Dragon to a blood match. So I assume that they have to, fight to the death. So I really enjoy this aspect of the book. This is my favorite part of the book right now, the relationship between Dragon and his race. Yeah. And seeing the Kerr / Dragon side of things, and just making that kind of comparison. I think that's my favorite part right now. I didn't really enjoy the alien invasion arc as much as many other people did.
Right, but getting to see Dragon back as a major character in the arc, probably that's what you got. You enjoyed the most out of this, is just having Dragon back.
It's not so much Dragon back, but I think the story is the better of the two stories. Dragon's
I see.
kind of conflict with, his son and doing the things he wants to do. And at the same time, we're at the point where the race is now rejecting him as though he's just as bad as Krull, and as just as bad as Kerr.
Yeah, I could totally see that. But of course, they wouldn't openly, they wouldn't have openly criticized or opposed Kerr.
Right.
But of course, Krull wasn't
Right.
there. Krull apparently has all the abilities of a chosen one as well.
Yeah, and he
so
was leading them
he has
for
claim.
years before Dragon came back.
Right. So, it's kind of funny. They're against killing, but he's challenging him to a blood match.
Yeah, it's some
It's a
rarely
trick.
used thing that they have in their religion or whatever. Who knows?
We'll see. We've got a pretty good hunch Dragon's coming back to Earth in the next issue or two. So
Right.
We'll see how that shakes out. And we're running a little long, so real quick, we'll just go through Vanguard, which is unfortunate because Vanguard was kind of cool this month.
Yeah, every month, Gary and Frank and Adam on letters, they've been hitting this out of the ballpark, and it pains me to say it, but I love Erik Larsen. He's my favorite comic book creator, but I think the Vanguard serial has been outdoing the Savage Dragon stories in this past arc. I just think Frank and Gary have been firing on all cylinders, and they've been doing a good job incorporating all of the Vanguard mythos together, all the characters, and visually Frank's work's just been a delight, issue after issue. And his covers.
Gotta agree. And I recall hearing from Gary's mouth that, or at least off the internet through Gary's typing, that originally the Vanguard serial was going to be 10 episodes, but it's been lengthened to 12, so we're going to get 2 more than we were originally expecting.
Yeah, that's great.
It is great.
So even just like the use of, you look at that first page and the Tyranian spaceships. I love how he's using like their tentacles to kind of surround Vanguard's ship and all like stick to it and stuff. It's just a neat visual.
Yeah, and it's kind of the thing that you're kind of missing from Savage Dragon, like the tactics that the alien race employs. It isn't all just snarling monsters. They actually have some idea of what they're doing.
Yeah, you get to see their robot drones and stuff like that. They have technology. They're actually they're smart.
This installment's big climactic moment is that Wally pretends to betray them, but actually teleports them away from their ship while he uses it to self-destruct and destroy the majority of the aliens and their ships.
Yeah, basically saving everyone's life that's in Vanguard's little group.
Now, granted, teleportation is a very heavily used thing in Vanguard, so nothing's final until we see a body, but it does look like it's might be for real.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel. I love Wally. He's a really fun character.
Yeah, I mean, he's been with us since almost the beginning of Savage Dragon. He is a fun character. I got to think, he's a robot, so, and like you said, teleportation, mixed in with that, there's got to be a way that he's going to come back, or...
Yeah, there's a lot of outs, basically. We'll see if any of them are actually the case.
Right. I do like just a lot of the action with the aliens floating around in space and ships getting ripped apart, and it's just pretty cool. What's that guy's name? Amok? A-M-O-K? Like that.
Yeah.
He kind of busts out almost like a Hulk-like character and just kind of jumping from ship to ship and flinging out Tyranians.
And Lurch is copying him and helping out.
Yeah, so there's like 2
which
of
is
them.
kind of fun. Lurch is definitely my favorite character to come out of this.
Right. So yeah, I mean, that kind of wraps that up. I don't know where we go from here, but it kind of ties in with the main story, and they hear about an act of God kind of saving the Earth, and up in space, Wally kind of saved the crew. And I know you said there's 2 more episodes coming through this, so it'll be interesting to see how this wraps up, if Vanguard sticks around or if he travels back to his home planet to look for survivors, or I mean, because really he's got no more reason to be here unless he just wants to stick around and be with Roxanne or whatever.
You know, I wonder, calling it an act of God in this panel, I wonder if, like, this will give Malcolm a reason to find religion or something.
Possibly. I don't think Eric's going to dwell on it, though, to be honest.
Probably not.
So that about wraps up the issue. I like I'd said all along, I have kind of mixed reviews on, mixed opinions on this. I liked some bits I didn't. I think overall, the alien invasion story arc kind of ran out of steam. I don't know if Erik kind of lost interest, as he went along or what, but it kind of felt a little bit like that.
It's tough to, be this harsh on it. I mean, it's still a book I love, and I'll never drop it. And the previous 2 issues where the invasion was really heating up, I was really hyped about it still. I really liked what it was doing, where it was going. But when I found out that it was going to be, the invasion was over this issue, I started getting a bad feeling about how it was going to shake out because of just how much time there was to tell the story. And I really think this arc suffered because it could have used 1 more issue.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been really something special.
Yeah.
As it is now, it's, adequate, got the job done. Saw a bunch of death and monsters and explosions, and it was cool.
And I'm not trying to be harsh on this book either, because there's a lot of good things that came out of it. But I think Erik kind of missed the boat with the intro. We had the whole Kerr thing, and it was, almost world-shattering. It was world-shattering. And it was a huge, big mega event for Savage Dragon, and I thought the book was going to settle down and focus on Malcolm and Angel and be more kind of street centric, kind of bring it back to the Chicago kind of background, and we had characters like Thunderhead and do more individual character development, and then it seemed like he had this push to get this Tyranian invasion going because the story was lingering from, I think, issue 150's backup, that they were on their way to Earth. And I think he just, I don't know. I mean, only Erik knows, and we can ask him, but I don't know if his heart was into it after he started it. I definitely hope he goes back to just kind of focusing more on Malcolm and Angel and doing kind of smaller scope adventures. And I think he kind of hinted on that in some of his recent interviews.
Yeah.
But I don't think he can keep outdoing himself with these big, world-destroying.
No,
things.
I definitely agree. And, I think you have to have that sort of world-destroying thing happen periodically. It's just they've happened so close together lately that there just hasn't been a lot of time for the series to breathe.
I agree.
And I definitely agree that it needs to slow down just a little bit. You got to build up all those new Vicious Circle characters we've seen. Tell that Project Born Again story. Reveal Overlord. Build up the supporting cast. I don't know. I think there's a lot of components to the book right now that can be amazing,
definitely.
And will be amazing.
Definitely. I'm still having a great time reading it. Not every arc's going to be your favorite arc,
Yeah.
So, let's...
I know some people that really dug this.
Definitely.
I mean, they took it at face value, and they loved it.
Right.
I mean, I don't love it. I like it. Let's move on.
Yeah. So that's that in a nutshell.
Yep, Savage Dragon 180.
We're going over on time, so
Oh my, yes.
let's just quickly for the next episodes. I don't know what's going to come out. If they're both going to come. Both Savage Dragon and Supreme are going to come out in the same week, like they did. This past week. But
I kind of hope
right.
not. I kind of want to see them space out a little bit.
But either way, Savage Dragon 181 will be the next issue, and basically the solicitation says the invasion is over at a price and talks about the stunning aftermath the cover shows Dragon floating in space with a bunch of debris. So we'll probably get a conclusion to Dragon versus Krull. And for Supreme, the solicitation for Supreme 66, it just says Supreme is out for blood and Supreme is our last hope, or is she? And it says featuring a guest star you have to see to believe. So I don't know what that's about. I'm not going to speculate now because it could be anybody.
Well, that solicitation came out before the solicitation for 67, so it may just be talking about Omni-Man.
True.
That could be the cliffhanger.
And the cover of that just has Supreme punching the crap out of somebody, and Suprema kind of looking on in horror. You see that like ear flying. So that's that. It was for as much as I had a mixed take on Savage Dragon 180. There was a lot to talk about, and that's always makes for an interesting issue. I got a lot out of it.